My husband did not forget his wedding ring at home. He was wearing another one in a private celebration downtown, standing beside Kendra Voss while his mother lifted a champagne glass and called it the day our family finally got corrected. I found the post at 8:17 p.m. alone in my Denver office, still wearing the black dress I had chosen that morning because the museum contract needed me to look calm. My name was on the agreement that paid for the floral walls, the linen rentals, the servers, and the private bar behind them. I had just sent the final banquet proposal to the board of the Marlowe Art Museum when Diane Maddox's photo froze my thumb above the screen. Brent stood in a charcoal suit with one hand settled on Kendra's waist, smiling the way he used to smile before bills, deadlines, and lies began living between us. Kendra wore ivory, not quite a bridal gown, but close enough for every woman in that room to understand what she wanted people to believe. Behind them, on a small brass stand near the dessert table, was the vendor card from my company, Pierce House Events, clean and expensive under the soft gold lights. The caption was worse because Diane wrote it like I was already gone. So happy to see my son surrounded by the woman who truly fits this family. No apology. No mistake. No accidental tag from someone who had too much wine. Brent's sister had commented with little hearts. An aunt wrote, finally. And someone from their golf club congratulated him like this had been expected. My stomach tightened, but my hands stayed still, because every smiling face in that photo was someone who had eaten at my table and called me generous. Marissa, from client services, stopped by my door with a folder pressed to her chest, then slowed when she saw my face. Natalie, are you okay? I locked the phone, slid it under my palm, and kept my voice even because panic would have made the room belong to them. I just need to print a few documents before I leave. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on me long enough to tell me I had not hidden it well. And when she walked away, I opened the post again because the proof was still there, shining under flowers I had paid for. I stayed in the parking garage with the engine off. My phone opened to Diane Maddox's post. Brent's hand was on Kendra Voss's waist. The Pierce House Events vendor card sat behind them, and every smiling face there had eaten at my table. A photograph could be denied by a man calling it misunderstanding. A voice was harder to clean up. Diane answered on the third ring, bright and playful. Natalie, aren't you still working late? Behind her. Glasses touched. Someone laughed, and I heard Kendra's name with the warmth people reserve for someone inside the family. I kept my eyes on the vendor card and made my voice plain. Diane, where are you? Because it sounds like a party. Her breath caught. Then she smoothed it over. Just a small family celebration. Nothing you need to worry about anymore. I asked if Brent was standing beside Kendra with a ring on his hand, and the sweetness left her voice like a door being shut. Well, you saw it. Then, maybe now we can stop pretending this marriage has been working for anyone but you. I stared at the concrete wall while her words settled against the photo, because the caption and that finally under his aunt's comment had already told me this was not new. I asked whether Brent planned to file for divorce before letting his mother host another woman like his wife. Diane sounded irritated. Not ashamed. Paperwork is for lawyers. Natalie. Family knows who belongs. And Kendra makes him feel like a man instead of an employee in your shadow. I let her finish, then asked the only question that mattered. Who paid for the room? Diane? She laughed. Careless enough to be useful. Brent handled it because he runs that company now. That was the first clean crack. Not the ring. Not the ivory dress. But Diane's voice pointing straight at my books. I ended the call before she could turn cruelty into advice. Proof was no longer trapped inside a photograph. It had spoken. I did not drive home after Diane handed me the first loose thread. Home was where Brent would expect me to wait with a broken face, ready for whatever speech he had rehearsed between Kendra's laugh and his mother's approval. I drove toward Owen Price's office instead, with the photo saved, the comments captured, and Diane's words still sitting in my ear. By the time I reached downtown Denver, my hurt had narrowed into something cleaner than anger. Owen opened the door himself because I had sent one text that said, "I need you tonight." He was 52. Calm in the way only a lawyer can be when panic has already made every mistake. I set my phone on his conference table and let him see Brent's hand on Kendra's waist, the Pierce House events card behind them, and Diane's caption pretending I had disappeared. He did not ask if I was sure. He looked at the vendor card, then at me, and said, "Do not call your husband again. Do not post. Do not warn anyone. If your company paid for that room, this is no longer just a marriage problem." I sat across from him, with my coat still on, listening while the building settled around us and my life shrank into documents. I gave Owen the post date, the hotel name, the museum contract I had closed that evening, and every recent event expense Brent had touched. He wrote quickly, not dramatically, because paper was the only language that could survive what Diane had said. "Prepare the divorce filing," I told him, "but do not file until I say. I want the company protected first." Owen nodded and slid a yellow pad closer, asking for every access point Brent still controlled. Company email, vendor approvals, corporate cards, event software, alcohol service permits, client lists, private guest data. I answered, each word making the danger practical. He said we would review the prenup, operating documents, insurance records, and every payment tied to Kendra Voss. I left his office without calling Brent once. The next place I needed to go was not home. It was the books. By morning, the office looked too clean for what I was about to pull out of it. Pierce House Events occupied 2 quiet floors above a warehouse near Union Station, with glass walls and photographs from galas where people paid to be seen. Simon Bell was already in finance, his tie loose, his coffee untouched beside 2 monitors. He rose when he saw my face, and I closed his door before he could ask why Brent was not with me. I placed my phone on his desk and let him see Diane's post, the vendor card, Brent's hand, and Kendra, smiling under flowers, billed through my company. Simon's mouth tightened, not with gossip, but with recognition, because numbers remember what people deny. I need every expense Brent approved for private events, new vendors, and rush payments tied to that hotel, I said, and Simon sat down without wasting a breath. If this room was paid through us, Natalie, it should leave a trail. The first file opened clean enough to look ordinary. Then Simon pulled the vendor history, and Kendra Voss stopped being a woman in a photo and became a name attached to invoices. Voss' signature guest design had been added months earlier, approved by Brent, marked for VIP atmosphere support, and paid repeatedly without a service report, floor plan, or client sign-off. Simon scrolled once, his voice dropping. There is no deliverable here, and the most recent charge lands on the same hotel as the post. Diane had said Brent handled it, and now the books had answered how. Simon kept digging, opening emails Brent had sent with subject lines that sounded harmless until the attachments appeared. "Pay this today," he had written. "Private client sensitivity. No need to route through Natalie." One invoice listed floral enhancement and intimate guest styling, but the event calendar showed no client party, no contract, and no billing to cover it. Another payment had gone through 2 days before Diane posted the celebration, and Kendra's email appeared in the vendor setup notes, asking that descriptions stay general. I did not have to call her names. The invoices did that without raising their voice. Simon printed the payment logs, approval timestamps, vendor profile, hotel match, and every email where Brent told finance to bypass me. He looked pale when the last page came out, and I heard paper sliding into a folder like a door locking. "This is not rumor anymore," he said. And I nodded because Kendra had stepped out of the photograph and into evidence. Owen called, while Simon was still sealing the folder. And I knew from the silence before his first sentence that he had found worse than bad bookkeeping. He had pulled every insurance record connected to my name after seeing Brent's approvals tied to Kendra. There was a new life policy opened without a meeting, I remembered, with my signature at the bottom. The contact email was not mine. The security questions were wrong, and Kendra Voss appeared in the paperwork too. For a moment, I stared at Simon's printer tray, where Brent's invoices were still cooling in neat pages. The money trail had made me angry, but that policy made the room go quiet inside my chest. Owen kept his voice level. Do not confront him, Natalie. From this point on, every move has to be documented, and every access point has to be handled as a business risk, not a marital argument. So I stopped thinking like a wife and started thinking like the person whose name sat on every license that kept Pierce House events alive. Brent still had corporate cards, vendor approvals, guest lists, event software, liquor service documentation, and private client notes that could damage more people than me. I told Simon to suspend his credentials before lunch, quietly and completely. No announcement, no office scene, no warning text. Simon asked if I wanted his company email forwarded to legal, and I told him yes, along with every vendor request he had touched. Owen stayed on speaker while we moved through the rest. Corporate cards frozen. Event software locked. Hotel billing contacts notified. And pending vendor payments held for review. It was not revenge paperwork. It was the only legal door I had. And Brent had opened it himself when he put Kendra's name inside my books. By the time the system showed his login disabled, my hands had stopped shaking. The office outside Simon's door kept moving. Phones ringing. Printers humming. Staff planning weddings for people who still believed vows meant something true. I looked at Brent's suspended profile and took the first clean breath. He had wanted the room, the money, and the name. But the keys had never belonged to him. Brent and Kendra came back to Denver the next evening, like people returning to a room they believed had already forgiven them. Diane had reserved a private dining room at the Halstead, the same hotel from the vendor charge Simon had printed, and she had invited enough family to make pressure look like celebration. I was not there, but Owen's assistant confirmed the delivery time, and Simon confirmed the hotel had been told Pierce House events would not guarantee the room. By then, Brent's corporate card was frozen. His login was dead, and the name he had used to walk through doors no longer opened anything. At the front desk, Brent tried the old smile first. The reservation is under Maddox, he told the clerk. Private dining. Card on file. The clerk checked twice, then gave him the kind of polite look people use when money has stopped speaking. Sir. The card was declined, and the company authorization has been withdrawn. Kendra's smile slipped before Brent's did, and Diane asked too loudly what kind of hotel embarrassed guests in the lobby. Then the box arrived, wrapped in heavy cream paper with a black ribbon, addressed to Brent Maddox and Kendra Voss. For 1 second, Kendra looked relieved, as if humiliation could still turn into jewelry if the packaging was expensive enough. Diane touched the ribbon and muttered, maybe Natalie finally remembered her manners. Brent tore it open with the confidence of a man who still thought apologies came from women he had cornered. Inside were 2 sealed envelopes on Pierce House Events letterhead. Brent opened his first, and I was told his face changed before he reached the second paragraph. Immediate suspension pending investigation. Loss of all company access. Return of corporate property. And preservation of all communications connected to vendor approvals. Kendra ripped hers open faster, then whispered, No. No. This is wrong. Because her letter named Voss Signature Guest Design and the payments that had no deliverables, the room stopped pretending after that. Kendra turned on Brent in front of the family, asking why he said the company was basically his. Diane grabbed the letter from his hand and demanded how I had the authority to do this. Brent had no clean answer, because the letter carried Simon's evidence and Owen's language, and both were harder to bully than a wife. As hotel staff quietly removed the Maddox name from the private room sign, the welcome they expected became the first public door closing in their faces, while strangers in the lobby pretended not to stare. I arrived through the side entrance after Owen texted one word. Now. Brent stood near the lobby doors with Kendra's letter crushed in his fist, while Diane demanded a manager-like volume could put her son back in charge. Two financial crimes investigators walked in behind Owen and Simon, calm because the paperwork was already in order. Brent saw Simon's folder and tried to smile, but his mouth gave up first. "This is a family matter," Brent said, stepping in front of Kendra as if posture could erase invoices. Owen did not raise his voice. "Company funds, vendor fraud, and a questionable insurance policy are not family matters." One investigator asked them to remain available while he reviewed the complaint filed by Pierce House Events. Kendra grabbed Brent's sleeve and whispered, "What did you put my name on?" Because the letter had already told her enough. Simon opened the folder on a lobby table, and every page landed heavier than the last. There were Brent's approval emails, the vendor profile for Voss signature guest design, hotel charges tied to Diane's celebration, and Kendra's setup notes asking that descriptions stay general. The second investigator asked whether Kendra had provided documented services for those payments. She said Brent handled that, and Brent snapped, "Don't say another word," which made the silence sharper. Diane pushed forward, saying Natalie is jealous. "She is doing this because my son found someone better." But the hotel manager had already removed the Maddox name from the private room sign. That brass sign mattered more than Diane's speech, because it showed the room was no longer theirs. Owen handed over the insurance file next, and Brent's face changed when he saw the signature page. I did not accuse him out loud, because the documents had learned to speak without me. The investigators asked Brent and Kendra to come with them for a formal interview, and the lobby went still in that careful American way, where strangers look away while hearing everything. Kendra said she did not understand, but her email was sitting on top of the stack. Brent looked at me, stripped of charm, and I gave him nothing he could use. The party they built to replace me ended with hotel staff clearing place cards and Simon carrying the evidence back into his folder. The formal fallout did not arrive with shouting. It arrived in certified letters, canceled memberships, and quiet calls from hotels that no longer wanted Brent Maddox near their client lists. The investigators had the emails, vendor file, hotel charges, and insurance documents. Owen turned over with my signed statement. Brent tried to call it a misunderstanding until his own approval timestamps put him inside every decision he blamed on everyone else. Kendra Voss tried to sound innocent, but her email asking that service descriptions stay general sat beside the payment records in her name. The event world in Denver is polished, but it is not forgetful, and clients who trust you with private guest lists do not forgive messy risk. Her job was gone. Her vendor name was flagged, and the doors Brent had promised her closed without a slam. Diane Maddox lost the loudest, because the women who once admired her perfect son stopped inviting her anywhere his name came up. My divorce moved faster than Brent expected because Owen built it on documents, not feelings. The prenup held. The company stayed mine. And the judge did not look kindly on a husband who used his wife's business to fund another woman's welcome party. Brent sat across from me once in mediation, pale and smaller than I remembered, and whispered, "Natalie, can we not ruin each other?" I looked at the folder holding Kendra's invoices and the policy with my false signature, and answered, "You already tried." I sold part of Pierce House Events to Simon and the people who had protected it when I could barely breathe. I kept enough ownership to know the company was safe, then stepped back from rooms where champagne always sounded like glass breaking. Months later, I started a small foundation for women who needed lawyers before they needed sympathy. That work did not make the pain pretty, but it made it useful. My peace came quietly. On a cool evening in Boulder, over dinner with Patrick Lane, a man who did not ask what I owned before asking what made me feel safe. He pulled out my chair without performing it, smiled when I chose the porch table, and let silence feel normal. If Natalie's story feels close to something you survived, leave where you are watching from. Sometimes the happiest ending is not being chosen louder, but finally choosing a life where your name is not used against you.